This is Scott Becker with the Becker Business Podcast and the Becker Private Equity Podcast. We're thrilled today to be joined by Amber Walsh. Amber's in the executive committee at McGuireWoods. She also works at the intersection of healthcare and private equity, and just a brilliant, brilliant lawyer and business person. She had the unique experience this week that many of us have, unique for her so far, of taking the first kid to college, I believe. We're going to talk about sort of 5 lessons for either starting a job or starting college and just thoughts around those things. Amber, let me ask you to take it away and take a second to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about Joseph and about getting ready to go to school and a little bit more.
Thank you, Scott. Yes, I did have that experience this past week, and I can attest that it was survivable. I really was not sure until I made it through. It's one of those moments, those mature life moments that many parents dread, but we got through it. And more importantly, is we're so excited for him. He's at Johns Hopkins. He is playing football, so he is deep in the throes of football camp right now, getting ready to start orientation. And my daughter started school today. She is 16. She had her first day of school, first day driving to school, first day going to school without her brother in many, many years. So we've got a lot of firsts. And even if we hadn't had these firsts in the Walsh family, this is always the time of year when so many other people are having those firsts, including new jobs. Physicians are coming out of fellowship and starting their new jobs. Summer associates are kind of moving into their first year positions at law firms. There's just a lot of newness. And I think a lot about some really simple things that kind of transcend no matter what type of new you're experiencing can help you to be successful. So I've been thinking about that a lot.
Yes, and take a moment and talk about what are some of the pieces of advice you have or observations you have as people hit this part of life or they're starting a new job, either one.
So the first piece of advice, and we've certainly talked about this as a family getting ready to take Joseph, is to prepare, but not to over prepare. And you often will hear that piece of advice when somebody's going into an interview. But I think it applies equally well, but in a different way when you're starting at a new school, when you're starting a new job. And what I mean by that is to prepare, there are things that you can do to help yourself feel more comfortable walking in on day one. You'll get lots of different, in the right environment, you get lots of different outreach on organizational tips so where you can prepare yourself for the physical space layout. You know where your classes are. You know where to park if you're starting a new job. Some of those really simple things that almost sound ridiculous to name, but they can really take down the stress of the situation. Finding out where the key resources are, who are the people that are going to help you if you need it, and what are the expectations. I think that's the right level of preparation, but you don't prepare so much that you're going to show up unable to listen or show up inauthentic and not really being yourself because you have over prepared yourself in a way, particular environment. If you over prepare, it sometimes backfires and you can become too rigid. So there's this kind of delicate balance of preparation. But those are my tips on preparing just for the basics you need to be able to get through the day and the first several days.
Yeah, no, yeah, absolutely. And I love this concept of over preparing. So many people get stressed themselves so much that they do so many different things to get themselves prepared because they've not yet had the experience. They often could be missing the mark on what even to prepare for as well. So I think there's a lot to be said for that. I love that. Give us the second piece of advice. So we've got prepare well, but don't go in crazy about it. Give us the second piece of advice.
You know, Scott, that I'm a big seize opportunities person. I always give that advice to young associates at the firm. It will always be my advice to anyone, particularly when they are younger and newer to a situation, is you seize opportunities. You find them, Some of them will come to you, some of them you have to seek out, but you don't sit on the sidelines. You don't wait and hem and haw. You jump in, you see if it suits you, and then you filter it out later after you've had the experience to see if it was a good fit for you. Yes, there are limitations to that, of course. Yes, you have to be safe. You can't put yourself in unsafe situations, but there is no better time than when you're brand new on a job and you're 25, 26 years old and you're right out of law school, or you are 19 years old and you're on a new college campus in a new cool city, than to seize opportunities. And you will have a lifetime ahead of you to decide what works for you and to filter things out. But I'm just a huge proponent of taking the opportunities and exploring things that you may never have known were suitable for you. And it's so basic, but I think it's so important.
Yeah, absolutely. Is to look for those opportunities, to jump after them. There's this concept of until you're a certain age, say yes to everything and then double down on the things that you really love. And then at some point, as you get at capacity, you filter things out. But I love the concept of seizing opportunity and going after it. Love that. Amber, give us number 3.
So number 3 is not necessary for all people to hear, but if you're a member of the Walsh family, it's good for us to hear, and for some other personality types, which is, this may be a good time to listen a little bit more and just listen and make sure you're hearing and taking in. Because when you're in a brand new environment, certainly the advice is not to keep your mouth shut. People do want to hear from you, but it is a time that I have found that I need to tilt towards being a listener more than a talker when I'm brand new on a board, when I'm in a new leadership position at the firm, when I'm in a new environment. Even someone like me who has not changed jobs in 23 years, I have had new experiences and new rooms where I sit, and being a little bit more of a listener, an active listener, being there, being present, that's my third piece of advice.
Thank you. And I love that as well. And some people have strong personalities or overly strong personalities, and they can't help themselves to jump into the room the first time they're in that room and try and command the room. And like you said, I think great advice is to take it easy a little bit on that and let things come to you and listen. It's almost like that advice about the first 90 days in a leadership job. You don't do everything on day one. I love that. Amber, let's go to number 4.
So this is a bit of a pivot. So the first pieces of advice were all about jumping in to the newness, but you come to a new job, you come to a new school or a new position with a lot of hopefully self-awareness, and you know what has made you successful. And one of the great joys of parenting teenagers and young adults is the amount of self-awareness they have, and seeing them learn what is successful for them in a way that you don't have that when you have a toddler. A toddler is not aware that they need to go to bed to get back on track. But I love having teenagers, and certainly as adults, we have learned the things that make us successful. And my 4th piece of advice is to remind yourself of those things. That is where you are grounded. These are the things that you need to do for your own personal health and well-being. And you cannot get away from those things for too long before the absence of those things will start to take its toll. So for a lot of people, that's healthy eating or working out or taking a break to experience art and live music. For my son and for me, it's church. It doesn't have to be a particular denomination. We both love to experience different worship environments. But one of the things that I reminded him about was, hey, you might not find the place to worship in the first couple of weeks, but you can't wait too long, because it will start to catch up with you what you are missing. and you won't even realize it, and it may be a little bit too late. So my fourth piece of advice is going into those new situations, knowing what you need and making sure you don't wait too long before you give it to yourself.
That's fantastic. And everybody's got to know what it is they need themselves to keep themselves centered and focused and on board. And I think if it is church or your place of worship, that is fantastic. But whatever it takes to know what works for you to keep yourself centered and healthy and grounded. And I think what happens is you, for a period of time, can get away without going or doing where those things are, and you could sort of trick yourself into thinking you're okay. And then sooner or later, those things always catch up to you, those habits that you need, or that worship that you need, whatever it is. And then you find yourself behind the eight ball because now you got to get yourself back together because you let yourself go too long without those things. So I think that is a great, great sense. And Amber, give us the fifth one. Then I'm going to ask you to summarize the five really quick.
Sure, absolutely. So the last one is really kind of just a conglomeration of all of the first ones, but probably relates more to that fourth one, which is just that constant check-in with yourself. And it's especially important when you're in a new environment because you're not going to be surrounded by nearly as many people who know you so deeply. If you're in a new job, you have new coworkers, and yes, you may have some friends there that know you well, but it is more incumbent on you personally to check in with yourself and assess where you are. So I really think the kind of daily assessment about what all you learned that day, if you're listening, what you learned that day, what you want to try to modify the next day, what you didn't figure out in terms of that preparation. I thought I knew where the key resources were, but it turns out I don't know who fixes my computer, or I don't really know how to run the copier, or whatever it is in a new job. But it's that kind of daily reassessment and kind of regrouping at the end of a day and maybe at the end of a week that I think is really centering. And that falls a lot on you when you're in a new environment rather than falling on what you hope will be a building community around you. But in a new environment, you kind of got to do it on your own just a little bit more than usual. So that's really kind of my last pretty simple piece of advice.
So, Amber, I love all of that. And then can I ask you to just give us a quick summary for our leaders of the five pieces of advice for those that are listening at home and want to sort of get a recap or take notes?
Absolutely. So they would be to prepare, but not over prepare. Just find that right balance to make you comfortable starting in that new opportunity. The second would be to grab the opportunities, to extend yourself, to reach more when you're in a new environment that's going to have new opportunities that you may never have been exposed to. The third is to probably listen a little bit more than may naturally be your instinct. Be present, be an active listener, but to listen. The fourth would be to know yourself and know what you came to that new experience with that has always made you successful. And don't let yourself get too far away from it. That's the church, the workout, the reading, whatever it is that you need to do for yourself. And then the last is that constant check-in, that daily assessment, and maybe it's a weekly assessment to make sure that things are going well, that you know where you need to pivot, and making sure that you do that for yourself and you're not relying on others to do that for you. So that would be kind of my summation.
And I love that. I'm going to ask you one more question. I think you've got a magnificent daughter who I think is a junior in high school. You've got a son starting college, playing football, going to Johns Hopkins. Two things. One, what position is he playing? And two, could you do me a favor and just give a very quick shout out to the two children and to your husband as well, just because what a remarkable family you guys have put together and built. But if you could do a quick shout out for the two children and also what position is he playing in football, that would be great.
I would be delighted to. So he is a tight end. He is being expected to bulk up because he's a pretty trim tight end, but he also plays slot receiver. So I won't reveal what I know about the Johns Hopkins offensive strategy, but they use a lot of receivers. So that's been kind of cool. So, and that is my son, Joseph. So my shout out is to him. We're really, really proud of him, really happy for him, really excited. And you're right. I have a daughter, Abigail. She's actually a sophomore, but she did just get her license. And she also loves sports, plays soccer, runs cross country in the fall, but is really excited to now be a Hopkins football fan too. And of course, my husband, Tim, who, is kind of the foundation of the family's sports mania. So thank you for that, Scott. Thanks for asking.
Well, no, absolutely fantastic. Just fantastic. And I know that the brains and athleticism come from both you and Tim. What a remarkable group. Thank you so much for joining us on the Becker Business Podcast, the Becker Private Equity Podcast. And congratulations to Joseph on starting and Abby on her license. Just fantastic. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.